Good morning and welcome to Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and also FBC TV. And our guest this morning is the CEO of the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission, Joel Abraham. Thank you so much for your time. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Okay, well, just to start, in terms of expecting the marketplace to be fair, what are consumer rights and what does each consumer right mean? If you could sort of break that down for us.
Sure. If you look at consumer rights in general, there are about 9 different consumer rights, includes everything from right to basic needs all the way to right to redress, right to information. And there are certain things under the consumer protection mechanism or laws that we have that we always stress on. Things such as right to redress, right to information. Now, these are 2 very critical rights that consumers ought to be aware of. A right to redress basically is once a consumer goes and purchases something, it is taken that nothing in this world is perfect. Things can go wrong, things can go amiss. As such, it is imperative that a right to redress exists. So say, for example, you go and buy this mobile phone. You have an expectation that the mobile phone is going to work and it's going to do what a mobile phone is supposed to do, which is let you call in, call out, you're able to text. And say, for some reason, because this is a touch phone, you're unable to press some keys on your keypad. So it's no longer serving the purpose that you had intended for it to serve. As such, you take it back to the trader that you had purchased it from and say, look, it's not working. People classify that as faulty, but really it's not fit for the purpose that it was purchased for. As such, the consumer has the right to take it back and seek redress. Redress basically means is to get some sort of remedy. Now, most products come with warranty, and warranty what basically means is you can go and get it repaired at no cost to you. So that is the essence of having a right to redress, because it is taken that when goods are manufactured, they may have some problems, because even cars that are made out of factory, brand new cars, we've got so many complaints coming to us that say, we've purchased this thing, firm out, brand new, still has problems. Now, things that are made by people, right, unless God makes it, then it's perfect. People make it, it is taken, there's always going to be some problems. It could be, and that is why warranties are given. That is why a redress mechanism exists. Now, what happens is there are instances where traders do not want to honor the redress mechanism, and that is where Fccc, as the Consumer Protection Enforcement Agency, steps in and says, no, you have to. Right to information. There's a simple thing when our officers go out and check shops on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that they check is price marking. And so many people come back to me and say, look, this law is very burdensome. Traders come back to me and say, we have to mark. Why should we mark prices? The answer is quite simple. It is there for consumers to make an informed choice. Now, when products are homogeneous in nature, which means you could buy it from different places, you must have the ability to actually pick up a product, look at its price, and then go to the next place, pick up the product, look at its price, and make an informed choice. Unless you are able to compare and contrast between what you're getting in one place as opposed to the other, you are unable to make an informed choice whether you're getting value for money or not. So when a trader does not state a price, basically depriving of your right for information. So these are some of the things that is, that's important for consumers to know. Of course, then there are other rights such as rights to basic needs and all. These are enshrined as basic consumer rights. Now, there's a general movement worldwide where people are saying that consumer rights or consumer protection is now a basic human right. I've been to various conferences overseas where the European Union, say, for example, is discussing this to say, food, water, shelter is all right, but consumer protection, consumer right is a basic right as well. Given that all these things are now being discussed, I think it's important for us also to explore. Generally, in Fiji, we have got a culture of silence. People just don't want to come and talk out. People just don't want to come and complain. They say, oh, if you complain, you're frowned upon. People say, oh, look at that guy, he's a telltale. Okay? So because that thing is looked upon there's a stigma to it. So people don't want to come forward and complain. There's one. And two, People say, oh, I went and bought something, the shelf price was $10 and I had to pay 11 at the counter. I'm already at home. If I have to now go and report, it'll cost me some more dollars to go to travel and lodge a complaint. So I'll just leave it. But what people don't realize is a $1 for you, and then 10,000 other customers are walking in paying an extra $1. That's $10,000. So just because you don't speak up, other people also suffer the same fate. And that's why it's important for consumers to unite, exercise consumer solidarity, be able to raise their voice, be able to question. Whenever anybody says anything, you question whether it is right or it is wrong. Don't accept anything on face value. Now this applies everywhere. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're the prime minister or you're the fisherman. Everybody is a consumer. So because everybody is a consumer, everybody should take this in a very positive manner, and people should always be skeptical. So if a business is advertising something, say Cadbury chocolate was $10 is now $1, you should ask why is it $1, why is it all of a sudden so cheap? If something is being advertised and given to you so cheap, then what is the rationale behind it? All of a sudden, do traders not want to make profit? All of a sudden, what has happened? Now, if you pick up the product and check the expiry date, it could be that it's near expiry as well. Now, if consumers get into the habit of asking questions, it will happen everywhere. You go into Fccc to lodge a complaint and somebody is trying to assist you. You ask them questions. Okay, what are my rights? Can you explain everything to me? We find when people come to us, we have to tell them, okay, these are the things. They rarely ask questions. And as you will see that we in elections here, there's so many issues that are being discussed. And it's important for people, if you're going to be a good citizen and make an informed choice, you need to ask all the right questions. So it is, I think, asking questions should be a way of life. Because at the end of the day, it's a basic right. It is part of you as a consumer. Because if you don't ask it in one place, you can't ask it in another place.
And of course, if you have any questions for the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission CEO, Joel Abraham, you can call 3220906 or 3220907. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And of course, this morning we're having a conversation with the CEO of Fccc, Joel Abraham. And if you have any questions, please call 3220906 or 3220907. Now, sir, earlier we had touched on consumer rights. I want to know about, traders, in terms of compliance. Has that sort of improved over the years?
Yeah. When I started as CEO in 2016, we found one of the first things I did was look at the compliance levels. At that time, the compliance levels were sitting at about 55%, which meant that 45% of the traders at any point in time, they continued to offend. And by 2016, from 2010 to 2016, we were called the Commerce Commission back then. We had tried almost everything from issuing notices to imposing fines to taking people to court. When I came in, I found that we had about $440,000 in fines that we had collected. Compliance levels were still. So I adopted the simple principles. If you want something, ask nicely. So we started looking at collaboration. So instead of having a whip approach, what we did is we started working together. We started approaching businesses and started talking to them. I started talking to directors and I say, look, it's bad business for you to be ripping off consumers. It is in your interest to ensure consumer rights are protected. Some of them turned around and said, we don't follow. I said, well, if consumers feel that you are ripping them off, they won't come back. So you're losing repeat customers. So it's in your best interest to ensure that consumer rights are protected. They said, yeah, of course. Consumer is king. I said, yes, that's what we are saying. So the goal is common. So the first thing we did is instead of sitting on different sides of the table, we got on the same side and we said, our goal is common. We want to protect consumer rights. And for Fccc, it is all about ensuring that the enforcement happens and consumer rights are not breached. And for businesses, it's a different angle. They want repeat customers. They want customers to keep coming. And as such, we've been continuously exploring public-private sector partnerships in ensuring that proper compliance goes on. And when we re-evaluated, say, this Diwali inspection that has happened, we found 86% compliance, which shows, and this level of compliance has been consistent for the last 2 years. So from the end of 2016, we found that the compliance level hit 80% and it's never dropped. It's because businesses are making a conscious decision to say, no, we want to comply, as opposed to we'll just carry on our business, and if these guys come, then we will see. So it's no longer working against each other. It's all about working hand in hand. At the end of the day, we believe that consumers are important because they run the economy, and consumers should know they're important as well. I find in Fiji, consumers don't know the power they possess because the money is in your pocket. So you decide where you go. But I find that when people do go, so you see people sitting around in banks, you see them sitting around in these places where they buy their white goods such as TVs, refrigerators. So if they're sitting in courts or MHs, MH homemaker or Subrels, they're sitting there and they're waiting. They're saying, oh, we request, if you could please, Kerkere, if you can approve this. It's almost as if the consumer is begging, and it is almost as if the business is doing them a favor by giving them the product. It's the reverse. The consumer is doing the favor by buying the product, and the consumer is going to pay the interest on the higher purchase as well. So given after all the check and balances happen, I find that in Fiji, I'll touch on the area of consumer responsibility as well. There is no culture of checking, So you go to any of these places, and you'll find as soon as a hire purchase agreement comes, the sales boy will come with a piece of paper, and you say, boss, sign here, and sign here, and he'll flip these so many odd pages, and they'll just sign and say, okay, boss, when will the TV be delivered home? That's the only questions consumer ask. Nobody reads through the agreement ever, So that is where I stress, it's important to understand your value as consumers. It's important to understand your rights, and once you start understanding your rights and responsibilities, then consumers, they start asking questions as well. Now, when you start asking questions, you say, oh, sir, you haven't issued me a receipt. By law, you're required to issue me a receipt. And you find that the shopkeeper says, oh, consumers are aware. So he starts getting into a habit of issuing receipts. So compliance level automatically goes up. So compliance is not only my responsibility. Compliance is everybody's responsibility. We want everybody to follow the law.
So just going back, that was interesting, the point you raised. You're signing a piece of paper, but the language can be quite complex. So the consumer has the right to ask them to simplify the language too.
Yes, the person that's selling it to you must explain to you in a language that you understand. Now, we've had instances where somebody's gone in to a bank, signed off on documentation, only for us during investigations to find out this was a class 4 dropout. So he probably did not understand anything that was there. So they asked him, and then he just signed off. So we asked them, how did you explain? They said, we explained it to him in the English language. He barely speaks English. Slightly broken, so he won't understand the terms such as what is a hardship clause. He doesn't get that. So it is the onus is on the business to explain these things, but the onus is also on the consumers to ask the right questions.
So is that, when you talk about them asking the right questions, that's consumer responsibility?
Yes.
Could you just break that down for us as well?
Sure. Consumer responsibility entails, that's why I earlier alluded to, I said, don't believe what anybody says. No matter where you are, it should become a way of life, Don't just take anything on face value. Whether people are talking to you about a hire purchase agreement, or whether you're sitting somewhere at a political rally, or whether you are sitting somewhere looking at the TV, looking at advertisements, or whether you in store and there is some announcement going on that this thing for the next 5 minutes is for $1. Wherever you are, learn to ask the right questions. To say, if somebody is selling me a particular product for a particular amount, what is the rationale? Are they selling at a loss? Nobody will sell anything at a loss. Then still need to be operational. This sustainability should be incorporated. So wherever you are sitting, you ask people, and whoever is presenting to you, you ask them, what is the sustainability? How will this thing continue? If as a business you start selling everything to me at $1, how will you survive? You'll close down. What will happen then? So I always say there's actually, when I look at it from a regulator's perspective, I see there is a trilemma, and it's different. It's a three-legged stool. You're talking about sustainability of something. You're talking about the affordability and the reliability. So say tomorrow, Fccc can come in, and by law we can say 10 kg rice will now be sold for $5. Right? Currently it's about in the $10-11 range, and we say it's going to be sold for $5. So we've addressed the affordability issue, but what will happen? Everybody will stop selling rice. So the reliability aspect goes out there. And if businesses don't sell it at a reasonable margin, a profit that they can sustain, then sustainability, the business will close down, then who will service that place? So you have to, there is a trilemma. You need to look at sustainability of something, affordability and reliability. They all need to be balanced out.
We will continue this discussion after the break. Also, with Diwali tomorrow, I know there'll be a mad shopping rush happening today. What consumers need to be vigilant about? Mr. Abraham will answer that for us. This is Speak Your Mind on Gold FM and also FBC TV. And we're having a conversation this morning with CEO of the Fijian Competition and Consumer Commission, Mr. Joel Abraham. And of course, if you have any questions, you can call 3220906 or 3220907. And so as I was saying earlier, Diwali is tomorrow. So there's going to be a last minute shopping, a rush today, not just for fireworks, I'm sure for electronics and clothing with all the sales that are happening. But what areas should, consumers be vigilant about this Diwali?
Sure. Well, first of all, I've always seen this, that there's always a last minute shopping rush, consumers, they need to plan their spending better. Whenever there's a last minute shopping rush, there's a concentration of the number of people that are going to go out into any of these particular shops, which means that the incidence of non-compliance can be, there's a greater risk of non-compliance. Consumers are asked to be vigilant in looking at a few things. One, looking at the shelf price where in-store specials are given, and then when you go, ask for the receipt at the counter and see the receipt and see whether the specials corresponds to the price that you've paid. Now, if you find that it is not the case, please report it. The other thing that you need to do is check out items and check out the expiry dates. Right? If you're buying food items, check out the expiry dates. Could be some of them are near expiry. Also, in the past, we've seen that some items are tampered with as well. So where the expiry date used to be, it's rubbed off and a new expiry date has been put on. Or where the expiry dates have been put on the label, another sticker has been put on top of the expiry date. So I think it's important that consumers are able to still undertake that degree of scrutiny when making the purchases. Now, if you are out at doing other shoppings, make sure that you are checking various things. So if you're buying clothes, make sure you check that they have the right size, merchantable quality. It's doesn't have a button missing or stone on the side. So inspect it properly. Ensure that you've undertaken the necessary checks and balances. So just because it's a last minute shopping rush, don't rush. Take your time and make your purchase. Ensure that you get value for money. Whatever you're buying, make sure you've checked it properly and thoroughly before you purchase it, because when you take it and you realize that it's really not fit for purpose, it doesn't work. You bought a shirt and you can't, the buttons just don't touch each other, and it doesn't make any sense. So I think it's important for consumers to ensure that although this is a last minute shopping rush, please don't rush. Exercise your judgment, use your consumer responsibilities, be a wise consumer.
How about in terms of the traders? What's FCC's role in protecting the consumer's right and make sure that traders are being compliant? Was inspections carried out?
Yes. So we've carried out joint inspections with the Consumer Council. We've started that a few weeks ago. So far, we've undertaken about 287 inspections, of which 8 traders are now under active investigations. 19 first-time offenders, so an infringement notice has been given to them. There were 12 that had very minor issues, verbally warned and ensured that whatever the issue was corrected on site. Given that we anticipate that there's always going to be a last minute shopping rush, we will have officers on the field until the shops are open. So our officers will be working hard to ensure that your right as consumers are being protected, will be out and about in the field. And that is why I say to people, if you want to report a matter, please report it.
When you're talking about traders and, you issuing fines, what were some of the serious breaches?
Well, some of the things that we found is high degree of non-compliance was on misleading advertisements. Advertisement is a way to induce consumers to spend, and misinformation is something that people utilize quite a lot. You say something and people will just outright believe it, and that is why earlier I said, please be skeptical, ask questions, ensure that you check whatever assertions are being made, whatever somebody is saying, you check it. So misinformation and misleading people is high on the agenda. You've got advertisements being put out. An example, if I can give examples, outside the shop window you'll find 50% off on items. You go inside, there's one rack right in the corner of the shop that has 10XL, 5XL shirts, very large sizes that nobody really wears. In the corner that has 50% off. The rest of them will have 10%, 5%. Some items of something that used to be $39.95 is now $39. So there will be slight discount, very slight discounts, but that 50% is meant to bait people and get them in. So it has a misleading angle. Then you've got issues where price information is not given. So consumers, they don't know. So they say, oh, I'm here, I might as well just purchase it. And then you go to the counter, because you've got 50 or so items in your trolley, you don't really realize that, you paid maybe $1 extra on a few of these things. In a similar fashion, the shelf price advertised and the counter price that is charged is quite different. Now, previously, pre-2016, we found that the fines for this was about $3,000. Post 2016, when we were working on getting some laws amended, 1st of August 2017, we managed to get the fines amended. Fines that used to be 3,000 now have gone up to all the way up to 250,000. So we managed to get fines for at least two traders, 20,000 each, for one conduct where the shelf price was different and the counter price was different. Now the whole idea is to serve as a deterrent, because maybe $3,000 was not incentive enough for them not to reoffend. So those were the amendments that we had sought. These are the areas where you'll find that, especially when there's a last minute rush, when consumers are they're buying, people are always, and that's why I said don't rush, check everything, because if you're checking everything, then you'll pick some of these things up, and it's easy. And the test is quite easy. If something to you as a consumer seems suspicious, and probably you should flag it, because probably there is something that's wrong.
On Speak Your Mind, we're having a discussion this morning with the CEO of Fccc, Mr. Joel Abraham. We'll join you again after the break, but if you have any questions, you can call 3220906 or 3220907. This is Speak Your Mind, and of course, we're having a conversation with the CEO of Fccc, Mr. Joel Abraham. If you have any questions, please call 3220906 or 3220907. Mr. Abraham, can we just go back and speak about the fines? Previously, the fines were $3,000, and now they're $250,000. That is quite steep. Has it sort of changed, the unscrupulous behavior, perhaps, of traders?
Yes, to a great extent it has, but I won't say it's per se the increase in fines. What we've started doing is we've started collaborating with the private sector to make sure that we are working hand in hand to ensure compliance. Now, what this does is it encourages them to talk with us if there's any issues of non-compliance that they detect, to report it to us, so we are able to then assist them in ensuring that compliance levels are reached. What we find is increase in fines will always serve as a deterrent. Now, I say just because we have got so much fines doesn't mean we'll use them all the time. It is there just to ensure that we are able to identify those elements that are not behaving properly. And there are some elements who are always unethical. There are some people, whenever there's any initiatives, they'll always rub their hands and they'll say, how can I make more profit? And they'll come up with various things. And we found this out. Where duty gets reduced, we have to run around to make sure that these reductions get passed down to consumers. Now, what we've noticed is over time, is when there is say duty reduction or there is reduction. So just a few years ago there was a VAT reduction. What happens is the two things happen. One, the retailer sees that they can get more margins. So the question that the retailer is posed with, why should I pass the reduction to the consumers? Some of these items are not subject to price control. So the items that are not subject to price control, there is some degree of capture. The retailer retains some amount of profit. So one may anticipate. So while doing your economic modeling or while doing your numbers at a policy level, people think if you take away duty, if you take away VAT, then these things will automatically get passed down to consumers. In the practical sense, it doesn't. You have to ensure the implementation and the compliance of it. Now, two things are at play here. One is from the retail end, but the retailer is always not the culprit. What happens is because Fiji is a price taker, we import quite a lot of things. People don't realize that. Say butter, although Rewa butter is, there's a Fijian butter, but it is really very rich salted New Zealand butter. We buy waste slabs from Fonterra in New Zealand, bring it here, chain it with water and salt and repackage it as Rewa butter. So a lot of our raw materials are imported, like FMF rice. Rice is brought from overseas. Punja's flour, wheat is purchased overseas. So there are a lot of commodities that we buy overseas, bring them in, package them properly and sell it off locally. So when the overseas supplier sees that the local purchaser, the supermarket, is able to now save in places, so duty has reduced, which means the cost of that product locally, domestically has reduced. What happens is this person says, okay, now he has more money, how do I take some from him? So he slightly hikes his price. And after some time, you will find that, yes, in the short term, you will see that making such reductions have a slight impact in reducing consumer prices, but in the long run, the prices will hike back up. And it is not that the retailer in Fiji is making the money, the supplier overseas has increased the price, on which Fiji will have no control. Right? So that is those are the things at play here. So it is important for us also to be able to then look at it and analyze and say, is the particular business complying or not? Because prima facie it may seem like, oh, the business is non-compliant because he doesn't want to pass down the reduction. But when you delve into it, dig deeper, then you find that no, somebody has done it from the other end. Then there are certain instances where we found that local businesses have created buying houses in Australia. So instead of now buying things directly, they've got a company in Australia that buys it cheaper from there, and they hike their Australian company hikes the prices for the Fijian company and they sell it. That's called transfer pricing. So all those things, they happen along, and I might not own it. If I'm the supermarket owner, the Australian company could be owned by my brother. We do two different legal people. So in that instance, getting around and ensuring implementation and ensuring that the price reduction is actually felt, that becomes quite critical. That becomes important, and that is why we have to work hand in hand with the private sector. And like I said, just because we have the fines doesn't mean we'll use them all the time. With power comes responsibility, and we are always responsible in utilizing the powers we have.
On Speak Your Mind, okay, we're having a discussion with the Fccc CEO, Joel Abraham. Again, if you have any questions, you can call 3220906 or 3220907. Mr. Abraham, can we just look at the price regulation? What is it and why is it necessary? And how many items are currently under price regulation?
Sure. If you talk about price regulation basically is the Fccc coming in and looking at the supply chain, looking at the import patterns, looking at businesses getting goods in, and saying that certain degree of regulatory controls will be applied onto the prices. So what we do is we limit the profit that a business can make on it. Now this is done in consultation with the businesses. What really happens is, at FCCC we undertake various consultations and undertake submissions from the private sector to ensure that we are pricing the products correctly, because if we don't, then the product basically disappears from the market. So price regulation entails, so say if you are an importer and you bring in a good that is now classified price control. Now we do price control in certain instances because, one, there's three things that I previously mentioned. We look at sustainability, we look at affordability, and we look at reliability. Because there's no point in me putting price control on say a brand of soybean oil, and then the soybean oil doesn't come into Fiji anymore. So you might say, oh, the price of soybean oil has reduced from $2 to 50 cents. When you go into the shop, you can't buy it. So there is no point of that policy if you can't really realize the policy. So we always try and balance out sustainability, reliability, and as well as affordability. What we have done in the past is, we look at various sectors, and in these sectors what we do is we assess whether price control is necessary and desirable. It's not just that we wake up one day and say, let's impose price control here. What we do is we look at the level of competition in various markets. We say, is the market competitive enough to ensure that the prices of certain items can be sold without a need for regulatory intervention? Now you'll find that there are instances such as the electricity. Electricity is subject to price regulation. Now if EFL was to come tomorrow and say, instead of 31 cents per kilowatt, we're going to charge everybody more than that, what would a consumer do? Basically would not be able to do much, but because that is a monopoly. But we are so glad that we've got a very good management and team at EFL that are always not only looking at their profitability, but they're also looking at consumer interest. So when they do make submissions, they've always had consideration for consumers, for people that will not be able to afford. So they come up and they say, we need to have targeted policies, we need to have assistance. They approach government, talk about subsidies. So I think it's important to realize that